Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at wynnbet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at wynnbet.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
All right, welcome to the Fantasy Football Report. Here with a true rising star in the industry, Jack Miller, former RotoViz writer, now currently at Establish the Run and NBC Sports Edge. Jack, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm great. Could have been a better day for me overall, I guess, but I'm happy with a lot of these big performances we saw. When you were writing at RotoViz, a lot of your stuff was focused on how valuable these pass catching backs tend to be. And that kind of leads into this first item I want to talk about, because one guy who had a really big game today, David Montgomery, 106 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he wasn't targeted. Is David Montgomery someone that you own in a lot of teams? Is he someone you are comfortable playing? Considering he doesn't catch passes, and do you think that this kind of performance is something we can kind of bank on if we do happen to roster him?
Well, I don't have Montgomery personally on a lot of teams, but I will say that I was a little optimistic about, or I am a little bit optimistic about it moving forward, because in week 3, he ran 25 routes. Damian Williams ran 5 in week 2. It was 22-8 in Montgomery's favor. Week 1, they were tied. But it has kind of been trending. I don't have the numbers for this week exactly. I know Justin Fields didn't throw a whole lot of passes, so maybe that factors into the 0 targets for Montgomery. But he has been running a lot more routes than Williams. He did get hurt at the end of today, so hopefully he's okay, because it looked like it was going to be a pretty strong season for him if he avoided a serious injury.
Yeah. You mentioned Justin Fields didn't throw a whole lot, only 17 attempts, but he did look quite a bit better, I think, in this game. Well, I mean, not quite a bit. He looked, compared to week 3, which was a disaster, this was a little bit encouraging. Are you ready to say that week 3 is kind of just an aberration and Justin Fields will be fine, or how much more do we need to see from him before we're confident?
I think it's definitely an aberration. I mean, it would have been hard for Fields not to be a lot better than what he did in week 3. I think Bears had a ridiculously low number of total yards, but yeah, I mean, he had 215 yards on 18 passes, which is great yards per attempt. He did only run 3 times, and I guess for fantasy purposes, the thesis was kind of, he's going to run a lot. Maybe he'll have growing pains. So the lack of rushing volume is pretty concerning for fantasy purposes. But in terms of, long-term outlook, definitely you can feel much better about Fields than you did after week 1 or after week 3. Although obviously you don't want to just overreact to a 1-game sample.
Yeah. It was good, I think, to see, at least that he wasn't a total disaster like in week 3. I mean, you saw also Trevor Lawrence be kind of just horrible in week 3 and then pick it back up in week 4. So, I mean, it's tough to see these performances and kind of keep a straight head about it when they're so bad and you were expecting so much coming into the season. But
for sure.
One guy who we were expecting a lot of coming into the season and who did deliver today is DJ Moore. I can't remember the exact stat line he had, but he's someone who I know I own on a ton of my teams. I'm sure you do too. Yeah, I mean, this is here it is, 113 yards on 8 catches and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, obviously we don't expect 2 touchdowns anymore, but I mean, is this the sort of stat line we should expect for Moore going forward? Is this the real 300-point season breakout?
I hope so. I mean, that would be fantastic for my teams, and it looks like it's going to be so far. I mean, the fun number, maybe not the very predictive number, is the 2 touchdowns, because he's had 4 touchdowns in each of the last 2 years, and that's kind of been the knock on him, is that, he gets all these yards, gets all these catches, but he just can't score, and now he has 3 touchdowns in 4 games. The yards are there more than they've ever been. I mean, he's always had, 1,200-yard seasons, pretty reliably, but he's on pace for even more than that this year. So I say wheels up for DJ Moore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last season, Robbie Anderson was getting a lot of those targets. He did have 11 today, but he wasn't really able to do as much with them. But I mean, do you think that there's still a way with Darnold at quarterback for Moore and Robbie Anderson to kind of both have good seasons?
It's kind of tough because this year we're seeing they really did like switch roles where last year it was more
Mhm.
being kind of misutilized as the deep threat. Now Robbie Anderson, who has historically been a deep threat, is more in that role. And then you've got DJ Moore getting a bunch of targets. McCaffrey, when he's healthy, is going to get a bunch of targets. So I don't think Anderson's like completely dust or anything. I mean, like you said, he had 11 targets, but it's definitely hard to be overly optimistic on his outlook moving forward, I'd say, because it looks like DJ Moore's the alpha. And then when McCaffrey's back, he's going to command a significant target share too.
Yeah. 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 Elsewhere in this game, the other guy that I was really interested to see play today, Chuba Hubbard, he only had 57 yards. I think what's probably more concerning is that he only had 2 targets, and it was Rodney Smith who was targeted 5 times at running back. I mean, we're all hoping McCaffrey is going to come back sooner than later. But are you? How are you handling this backfield if you need a running back for a spot start or looking for a zero RB candidate? Is Hubbard still the guy, or are you kind of souring on him after this?
I think Chuba's got to be the guy, although it's definitely not good that Rodney Smith had 5 targets. Um, I guess I don't know the routes numbers. I don't know how many routes each of them ran. I don't know if it was just a fluke that, the targets distributed that way. But yeah, I mean, last week in week 3, when McCaffrey left early, it was Chuba Hubbard getting all of those routes, all of those targets. And then so if that flipped this week, definitely tough to be as optimistic about him. Although, like you said, McCaffrey hopefully 1 or 2 weeks away from returning, and then he can get back to where he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see this game, so I don't know. I don't know what exactly might have happened, and I don't have the routes numbers either. But I mean, I guess you are happy if you have Hubbard that he got most of the carries in McCaffrey's absence. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really get excited about only two targets when Smith had 5. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a tough situation, and we just hope just hope McCaffrey gets back. Um, yeah, on the other side of this game, we saw Amari Cooper make sort of a stat line. He had a touchdown. He only got 3 targets though. Is Amari Cooper someone you think that you're comfortable starting the rest of the season?
I'm comfortable starting him. I mean, only 3 targets. Dak only threw the ball 22 times, which maybe they're not as crazy pass heavy as they were last year, but still, I mean, you can expect a lot more than 22 attempts per game. And then Dalton Schultz had 8 targets, and it does look like he's going to be a thing, but I don't think you can expect this kind of target distribution moving forward. I mean, Amari had 3 targets, CeeDee Lamb had 5. Like, I think, especially as long as Michael Gallup's out, like, those two are Dak's 2 primary targets, and it just kind of an unfortunate game for both of them. I guess Amari had a good stat line, but volume-wise, not what you hope
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess it's surprising that Dak only threw the ball 22 times in a game that Dallas, the game was pretty close most of the way. Dallas only ended up winning by 36-28. I don't know. I mean, Carolina kept it close from what I could tell, but is this concerning at all that they didn't seem to want to kind of push the pace in this game?
I think that might be a little bit more of a concern because outside of that first game against Tampa Bay, where I mean the Bucks are kind of a pass funnel historically, where you can't really run against them, and so it just leads to a bunch of pass attempts, and that's what we saw in Week 1, and it was super exciting. But over the past few weeks, it's been a lot more balanced of an approach, and there's still targets to go around. especially because so much of the offense is going to go through Amari and CeeDee Lamb. But the passing volume doesn't seem to be as insane as maybe we expected and as insane as it was last season.
Yeah. I believe that Michael Gallup is eligible to return next week. So, when he's back on the field in the offense, if we're not going to be seeing the huge passing volume we had in week 1 and last season, what are you doing with the other guys, the other receivers there, CeeDee Lamb and Cooper? Are that's got to lower their target share, I would think, right?
Yeah, it definitely will. I don't really know what they would go for right now in a trade. I mean, and it's so hard. I don't want to say trade them because they're such great talent. So I think you kind of just you hold and you hope for the best because CeeDee Lamb, like all these guys, CeeDee Lamb especially is fantastic prospect, great year 1. I mean, great, good start to year 2. And Amari Cooper's been as reliable as they come for the better half of the last decade or whatever. So I think you just hold, and there will be better days. I mean, this was just 22 pass attempts, Dalton Schultz getting 8 targets. Those things are not going to hold moving forward. So I think better days are ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Another year 2 guy who I own on a ton of teams and was hoping to see more of and finally did is Jonathan Taylor, who got 103 yards and a touchdown this week. I don't have the target numbers in front of me right now, but I mean, is this Jonathan Taylor someone I assume that you also have a lot of on your teams? Are you happy with this stat line? Are you ready to start him with confidence again, or?
I have like a solid amount. I was a little more worried about the target share, and that remains my concern. Kind of. There's Hassan. What's up, Hassan?
There he is.
What's up, guys? Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Had a great group project go over. We're crushing the class. So shout out if any of my group mates are actually listening to this. They're not. If they ever listen to this, they probably never will. But it's been great. What's going on, Jack? Thanks for just stopping by. Sorry for crashing the show.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
No, all good.
And no worries. Yeah, we were just talking about Jonathan Taylor, and finally had a touchdown today. I mean, he had it wasn't the funny thing is he's had so many goal line carries and converted like none of them, and then he had a touchdown today, and it wasn't a goal line carry. But good to see him find the end zone again. Hines is still getting like his share of targets, and I think that's just kind of what you can expect. I mean, that's not to say Taylor's going to be a 0 in the passing game because he's obviously not. But so it's just kind of great to see Taylor finally have like a really good game. And I don't really want to overreact to this one game, just like I don't want to overreact to a bad game previously.
I think Hines actually wound up getting punished in this game for that fumble. They really sort of were like, you fumbled, and it was kind of wasn't it like I didn't watch the game, but I know it was actually a costly it was a costly fumble because after that he stopped getting any running work. Taylor also out targeted him after that, right? They also like sort of a little bit of that like punishment type of thing. I'd expect Reich calls it the hot hand approach, but I mean realistically, it is what it is. It was actually a punishment, right? Because Marlon Mack actually saw like 10 carries in this, right? And that's like ridiculous, right? Like when you see Marlon Mack gets him run, right? And like if this, like I know Marlon Mack, they want to trade him, but like this is not like a showcase that would have, built up his value. I actually was curious if you guys had a chance to get around to talking about Myles Gaskin, because he had like 2 rushes for 3 yards and like just sort of gone, man. Like Malcolm Brown's now the guy, but like none of these guys are putting up any numbers.
Yeah, we did not get to that, but I mean, it's definitely like concerning. Like I don't know how you can have any confidence in Gaskin, and it's annoying because it's like he's so much better than Malcolm Brown and I think Salvin Ahmed too, but he's just not getting the work. Brown had 8 carries today. Brown got the start. Salvin Ahmed had 2 carries. 2 targets, sorry. Brown had 1 target, and Gaskin I don't even think recorded a target, and that was kind of, what you want for him. Like even if Malcolm Brown's getting the early down work, you'd hope Gaskin would get some targets. And this is a game where the Dolphins were losing. Jacoby Brissett had 30 attempts. That's not a lot by any means, but it's a fair amount. And Gaskin still had no targets. So I think you definitely have to be concerned about Gaskin. Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at.
I'm actually worried about like the whole thing, right? Like I think Will Fuller sort of is completely faded away from what we were hoping for him to be. You're still seeing Gesicki get a pretty good target load, and then today, Parker saw most of the work. I was curious, what are your thoughts on Brian Flores' game plan? Because it seems like he's the kind of a super conservative coach who just sort of doesn't feel like really taking any kind of aggression or any kind of initiative here. And this is kind of, just sort of the worst of Brian Flores, right? Like we saw issues like this with Tua as well until he let Tua throw the ball. So I was curious about, just your thoughts, what's going on here with, Brian Flores' play calling, or at least suboptimal play calling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't watch this game. I think part of that has to be Brissett. And then Fuller did leave in the first quarter, so he had a hand injury or something, which is super unfortunate for stretching their offense out. But I agree that, especially as long as Brissett's under center, that this offense is kind of handicapped.
Yeah. Do you know, I was watching another game and I saw something, crawl along the bottom of my screen that said Waddle had like 3 catches for 33 yards in like the second quarter. And then I see that's what he ended up with. Like he didn't catch another pass the rest of the game. He only got 4 targets after coming off 13 targets in week 2. I mean, doesn't it make sense that they would try to get him the ball more after spending such a high pick on him?
You'd think so. I mean, it was weird because, Waddle had 3 catches super early, and then I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think Gesicki had 0 catches at halftime, and Devontae Parker had maybe 1, and then those guys just dominated the second half target share for no reason really. I don't know what happened with Waddle, but
yeah, it's a bit weird. I mean, so just to get back to a little bit on like the Finns, like I saw a report earlier today that suggested Tua would be back on October the 17th. But clearly the ceiling for the offense is a lot higher with Tua under center, but we haven't really seen that. And then, he got hurt, right? So, I mean, I was going to take this in a different direction. I guess my question for you is this one of those cases where, how everyone was excited for the Browns with Baker, and like it always feels like, they were like a few years too early, not even like 1 or 2 years, but like a few before it became a thing. Do you think we're sort of in the same stage with the Finns, wherein you're sort of waiting just for this great step forward, this great leap forward, but it's not going to happen just yet? It's going to be maybe 2 or 3 seasons before we see some sort of emergence from the team.
Yeah, I don't expect the Finns, like once Tua comes back, to be a great offense. I think that at least with Tua, that they can be passable, and I think for some of their weapons, that's enough.
No team can afford to overpay for talent. Build a championship team with Indeed the smart way by only paying for quality candidates that meet your must-have requirements. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed, the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. Just attract, interview, and hire. In fact, with Indeed, you can do all of your hiring in one place, even interviewing. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Indeed knows how important it is to make the most of your recruiting hours and dollars. With Indeed, you can save time and money by setting your must-have qualifications and only paying for the quality candidates that meet them. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Offer valid through October 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks. More like slow books. It sucks you in and slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to make the switch to NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 financial system, because NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need to grow, all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increased visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. And right now, special financing is back. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financial program only for those ready to switch today. Head to netsuite.com/bluewire right now. Get special financing at netsuite.com/bluewire. One more time, netsuite.com/bluewire.
Well, let's move on to a different game. Another huge performance. Tyreek Hill caught 11 of 12 targets for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is after he's been kind of quiet for a couple weeks, but I mean, you know, if you're a Chiefs fan or if you're a fan of good football and scoring points, then this has got to be a huge plus. Obviously, this is not sustainable, but I mean, should we give up on the McCole Hardman breakout now?
I don't want to say give up, but I do think that this offense runs through Tyreek and Kelsey to a greater extent than it did in previous years. And so this, like, I think Kelsey and Hill are going to have some, like, really stupid performances like the one Tyreek did today, and this was just one of them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think that's interesting about this team is the efficiency, the surgical precision with which they're able to get the ball, like on offense, is actually a bit of a detriment. It kind of curbs upside for like everybody else, right? Like this is like kind of an offense that kind of is concentrated in that like one or two guys are going to score like 95% plus of the points, and that's it. Like McColl's just going to sort of starve, right? And if McColl, and if it just so happens that you're going to see, Blake Bell or any of these random tight ends, and it's quite likely Travis Kelce is going to starve, right? Like it's just the way this offense functions is they're really dangerous. It's not like you're playing pace up. I believe they're almost like a neutral pace to kind of like within the bottom 25th percentile of the league because of how teams actually try and slow it down. You don't want to get in a foot race with the Chiefs because like that's just inviting disaster. You want to actually, like, opposing teams want to try and slow it down to inject some of that variance back into the game. I mean, like the last thing you want to actually like deal with is Patrick Mahomes like nuking you for 80 yards, like if you try to get in a foot race with them, right? Like, and the Chiefs clearly build this team for speed. I mean, like all these guys are fast outside of Kelsey, right? Like Pringle, Hardman, Tyreek. It's why they brought in like Sammy Watkins. Like this is just it. The team itself is built for speed. You're just not going to get the number of plays run in it as you should. And the Eagles, like on the other hand, like kudos to them for trying. They kind of got absolutely like they like this is the best that we've seen Jalen Hurts play all year. And even then, like it was just one of those like far too little, far too late type of things, right? I mean, like Mahomes had only 30 pass attempts. Hurts had 48, right? Like that just speaks to the kind of efficiency the Chiefs had. And then the Chiefs had 32 rush attempts for 200 yards, and the Eagles only had 19, right? So it is interesting because like in your mind's eye, you think that the Chiefs play fast. They don't. They score fast and they get off the field really quickly.
Yeah. They maybe, well, right, score fast, but that means you don't run a lot of offensive plays. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, 30 attempts is definitely on the low end for Mahomes. So I think you would expect to see more targets for a lot of these guys. You'd expect more than 6 targets for Kelsey. But yeah, I think that's exactly right, though, that this is outside of Hill and Kelsey, there's not going to be a lot for other guys.
I actually wanted to get Jack's thoughts on this a little bit. So Kenneth Gainwell had that massive game today, right? Like he did really, really well. He rushed only three times for 31 yards, and he caught 6 of 8 targets for 58 yards in week 4, right? Like, so, like, what are your thoughts here? Like talk to me a little bit about like how do you see the split going between Sanders and Gainwell?
I think what the Eagles do a lot of the time is when they get down, it's just Kenny Gainwell gets most of the snaps, and that's kind of what happened today. Is the Chiefs jumped out, and then they put Kenny Gainwell in, and so Kenny Gainwell was the main guy. He had a huge game, and I think you definitely have to be. I mean, obviously you're encouraged by Kenny Gainwell, and then Sanders. It's kind of a bad omen that as soon as they get down, it turns into the Kenny Gainwell show, and that's what we saw last week too. Is that I think Sanders had 2 carries or whatever, and the Eagles were down a bunch the whole game to the Cowboys, and Gainwell played a whole bunch of snaps. So that's just kind of how it is. And this is a team that probably will be in negative script a bunch of the time. And so Gainwell is definitely, I think, a thing. And then Sanders, that kind of chops off the ceiling a lot.
Yeah. And this is a follow-up. So after last week, like Jalen Reagor was just a ghost. As someone who actually tried to use him as a pivot play in DFS, like that worked out great if you wanted to brick all your teams. So it was good in that regard. But I was curious, like, what are your thoughts on Reagor? He's looked a little bit better, but I wanted to get your thoughts on just sort of, where you think he's going to be like this year. Like, is he like a trustworthy player at all? Like, what are you doing with Reagor, I guess?
I don't really think you can be too confident in him. DeVonta Smith has really good market share numbers so far. And then both tight ends are involved. Like somehow Zach Ertz had 8 targets today. And then the running backs are involved too. Quez Watkins is involved. Like, I just don't think I'm holding out hope long-term that because the prospect profile was so good that maybe he'll have like a later breakout than we'd hoped for. But for this year in particular, I kind of think it's DeVonta Smith is the only Eagles receiver you can actually depend on weekly. And then the other guys, I like what Quez has done so far, but I don't really think either of those guys are overly interesting.
Yeah, Reagor is an interesting kind of problem because he's someone I own in a lot of dynasty leagues where, if he doesn't start to actually produce sometime pretty soon this year, he's basically, you could be looking at someone whose value is almost at 0 in year 3. So, yeah, what are you guys doing with Reagor if you have him in any dynasty leagues?
I do have him in dynasty. The issue is, man, that's a very good question. I think you kind of have to package him up, but like, who are you really going to be trading him for, right? Because I think everyone has seen just sort of how variable his actual play is here, right? And he does fine when he gets like a lot of work, but it's just sort of not the same. I guess my bigger question is, like, it's clear, like, it's just sort of like what we already talked about a little bit, right? Is that DeVonta Smith looks like a grown ass man on the field, despite being like smaller than Jack, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
shorter,
he's like my proportions pretty much.
Yeah, exactly, right. But like he's really, really good at just playing the wide receiver position, whereas Jalen Reagor might be almost having just like his usage is being kind of like taken over by what Kenny Gainwell's emergence is, right? Like, and I don't know, like I'm a little like I'm nervous, but like I don't know who you trade him for. Do you guys have an idea or like thoughts?
I don't like perception around Jalen Reagor is so low that it's like it's not easy to trade him because not many people want him.
Yeah. Would you maybe think of like trying to package him up and get him on your team for really cheap? Is that something you'd be looking to do?
This is a cop-out answer, but like if it's cheap enough, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of pessimistic. Maybe not relative to like everyone, but like just in general. Like It has really not been a great start for Reagor. DeVonta Smith looks really, really good. So yeah, if the price was cheap enough, if I can get him as like a throw-in, I would want him. But he's not really someone I'm gonna go out and get Jalen Reagor right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. It's so rare if he doesn't do something in year 2. It's so rare to see these first round picks really become late breakouts, especially when they're as bad as Reagor has been. Like, you could get N'Keal Harry for nothing right now, even a couple of years ago. So like, if that's what you're talking about, then right, it's almost more of you'd rather have the roster spot.
And it's
Go
not
ahead.
like a sorry for cutting you off there, but it's not like a Christian Kirk situation wherein he was playing through injury most of last year, and they prioritized giving the ball to octogenarian Larry Fitzgerald. Yes, that's, if my memory serves me correct, that's who they were like trying to emphasize a little bit. I mean, I guess their plan worked. They just needed a septuagenarian AJ Green. I don't know, man. Like, he's looking like a man possessed. Right?
Hey, can we talk about AJ Green actually, since he had a pretty long touchdown today? I mean, obviously he's not on any of our teams, but
I wish he
is this
was.
like wheels up for AJ Green?
I mean, I'm not gonna say wheels up, but he definitely looks like he's gonna be a thing. And then the thing about like a potential Rondale emergence is that they're mostly using Rondale more in the slot. So like that would pose more of a threat to Kirk, who's also had some big performances. So it like as an outside receiver, like AJ Green seems kind of entrenched. And obviously I don't think AJ Green is anything special at this point in his career, but so I would not like want to go out and get AJ Green, especially like at his age. I don't think the odds of him sustaining this for a whole season are very high, but like if you have him and you like I think he is like flex viable, like if you're desperate.
Yeah, I really do agree with you. The interesting thing here actually goes a little bit back to DeAndre Hopkins. Last week, for example, he didn't practice all week and he played on Sunday kind of in that decoy role. This week, he was getting targeted before the Cardinals jumped out to like a 17-point lead. Then they kind of never surrendered from there, and they just basically shelved him to the side, almost like they don't want him to injure or risk re-aggravating an injury. Because I wanted to see exactly what his injury is. I want to be accurate when I'm reporting this, because he has a rib injury, like ribs. And so I think they're just trying to avoid leaving him open to bigger shots and like potentially get more hurt, because this is a team this is just sort of conspiracy theory type of stuff. At least just trying to read the tea leaves and figure out what the motivations are beyond curbing him, or like curbing his usage. And it's like, the Cardinals are 4-0, top of the division. They're gonna need a healthy nuke down the line if they have division victory hopes, right? So why not try and like prevent him from getting hurt a little bit more? Because it was a little surprising seeing him jump out to that 67 yards of like receiving yards really, really early, and then he just sort of went silent, right? So do either of you guys think about that at all, like in that way, or am I way off base?
No, I think that could be right. I mean, I guess what's confusing is that Kirk only had one target. Rondale Moore only had 3. Like, AJ Green has not been good before this game. So I think it's a question.
He was good last game.
He had like 100 yards.
Yeah,
like,
he's put together
right.
2 big games.
He's had 2 good
for
games.
someone like AJ Green. Yeah.
All right, I stand corrected then. AJ Green's good.
Are you guys buying this Max Williams stuff? Max Williams is doing it two weeks in a row as well.
He is.
Yeah.
He had like 95 yards or something a week or 2 ago, and then he had 66 and a touchdown today. So, I mean, with how tight end is, like, I guess Max Williams has to be on your radar, right?
Sadness, yeah. If you want to avoid the true sadness of that position, just get a guy in a fast-paced offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And send some prayers. On the other side, the only guy I really have interest here is Darrell Henderson. I kind of psyched myself out into believing that Sony Michel showed something. Nah, man, this was like the Darrell Henderson show, regardless of rib injury, and he also had like 6 targets today. Like, is this the kind of usage you're going to be buying going forward? That basically, as long as Henderson is good to go, regardless of being, on IR, like, is this what we should be expecting? Like bell cow usage.
I think Henderson is kind of like you have to start him. He is every time he's been on the field, he has been like McVay has just absolutely ridden him. Michelle had 3 carries today. Henderson had 14. Michelle looks like didn't have a target. Henderson had 6. So yeah, like I'm not gonna say that he's gonna maintain like just an absolute monopoly like he did today, but like he does look like he's like the very clear RB1 at the moment.
Yeah, he looks ridiculously good, and I sat him everywhere, by the way. And in a couple of leagues, I started Sony Michel. Like it's just been a banner day for good decisions on my part.
Michelle, it looks like, did lose a fumble in this game, so I don't know if that might have something to do with his low usage for much of the game. But I mean, I think you're exactly right that when Henderson's been healthy, he's been the guy. So he's probably going to be the guy going forward.
Yeah, it's definitely like he's interesting. I'm sorry, Ben Grash, but we might need to talk about this Van Jefferson being a nuisance thing. I think he really has curbed Robert Woods. Man, the red lights were really there for Robert Woods. Like we all just like sort of ignored them again. I don't know. What were your thoughts on Robert Woods this offseason, Jack? And like, where are you with him now?
I thought I'm not gonna say I thought Cup and Woods should have been valued like the same, and so I was more on Cup, but I didn't expect like this level of a fall off for Woods. And then he did like basically nothing the whole game today, and then I think like near the end he had like 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown on one drive, but like for the vast majority of the game before like absolute garbage time, he was basically worthless.
That actually kind of sums up his usage this season too. He's like he gets like these spitty like rushes or these spitty like 2 catches for 15 yards like after the game is like in the fourth quarter, right? Like it's like like starting him has been like an absolute nightmare. Just because like you're holding on hope, but we're 4 weeks in. This is who he is. Like we don't have much of his season left, and that's I mean like to keep making like maybe you can write it out, you can't, right? Like you have to make a snap judgment.
Yeah, I think I mean it really looks like the Cooper Cup show. So I think Woods. I mean, you like most teams I think might have better options at this point than Robert Woods, right?
Yeah, and speaking of target hog wide receivers, switching gears to Seattle 49ers, Deebo Samuel, he got 8 of 12 targets for 156 yards and 2 TDs, right? Jack, like, this is kind of like a one-man target tree, right? It's Deebo Samuel, then it's George Kittle, and then it's like
Ross Dwelly.
Sanu. I don't know, right?
And
like,
then it's Ross Dwelly.
Yeah, do you guys have any thoughts?
And then it's like 10, here? And then it's like 10 guys, and then it's Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what happened here?
I mean, it really does look like it's just Deebo. I mean, Ayuk's snaps and routes returned last week, and they weren't at the same level, I think, this week. This is just I think I saw somewhere that Ayuk was still like running a route and playing most snaps, but not like every single snap like he did last week. But it does seem like Deebo is just taken hold as the very clear wide receiver 1, and then Kittle, the second option. But I mean, I think the big news from this passing offense as a whole is that Jimmy G is out for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And so I think Lance is like great for fantasy purposes, but I am a little bit nervous that this is going to be a very run heavy offense, and that maybe Lance, who was not he was seen, as not as like developed as maybe a Lawrence or a Fields type. So I do have maybe more reservations about the passing offense as a whole than most people from what I've seen. And that's for the pass catchers. Like I think for fantasy purposes, Lance's legs make him like a very good option. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. It seemed like he did have eyes for mostly for Deebo. right? And then a little bit of Ayuk, but Ayuk couldn't make anything. He got nothing going today, man. Like he got nothing going. That's also with like Kittle playing through a pretty serious injury. I agree with you on Lance's legs. He, they were in full form. The weirdest thing is like Kyle Juszczyk is just popping up and taking away all those like RB targets, man. Like it's really frustrating. But it is.
I started Juszczyk in Scott Fishbowl today.
That's how
pathetic my team is.
I believe it. Kittle did himself no favors, right? He had 11 targets and he only converted 4 for 40. Like maybe he should have sat this one out, especially. But on the flip side, like the Seahawks keep these things very, very close. A guy who I've been pressuring the Pentagon to pick for some time has been Alex Collins to take him off of waivers. And now we might have to pay a little bit to get him off of waivers in the one league where he's available. You sort of saw him come in when the Seahawks had nothing going on the ground. He was twice as effective as Chris Carson, and he actually caught both of his targets for 34 yards. Is this someone you're interested in at all, like from a waiver perspective? What are your thoughts on Alex Collins going forward?
I think so. Penny went on IR, I think yesterday. So Travis Homer the last few weeks has been actually running routes, but it looks like Collins had 2 targets today, which I guess isn't really anything. And then he did have that touchdown run, and he looked really good on that touchdown run. So I'm kind of curious to see, I don't have the numbers right now, if Collins kind of marginalized Travis Homer and took over as the clear backup. And then maybe even more than that, like he looked like a legitimate threat to Carson today. So I think I definitely would have some interest in Alex Collins.
Yeah, Sean was kind of beating the drum for Alex Collins all off season, and I guess because he didn't really have much of a role in week 1. Kind of, if I did have him on any of my teams, I probably dropped him by now. But definitely someone who I think you should be paying attention to, especially if your running back situation is as bad as mine is in most places.
I was saying that we should have picked him up last week on waivers, and I was ahead of the curve on CPAT. It's in the emails. You guys got to read these. I try and keep them really, really quick.
That's true. Hassan keeps talking about all the things he did wrong today. One of them was benching Kenneth Gainwell, but he did make up for it by starting Patterson over him. So
all off season, I am tilted that Cordero was a wide receiver on Underdog all off season.
Yeah. He's still getting used like a wide receiver. There's actual impetus for him to be labeled as a wide receiver, even though he was technically a running back, right? But like they should go with what the team is saying. But we did pick up CPAT. I did say that we should be considering Alex Collins. Now we might have to overpay for him. We did really, really pay a lot to get Ramondre Stevenson in one league. Like I think like 85% of a FAB, and now he's like inactive for this game. So we did a really good job. So good job us. That was just great. But just to round it out a little bit with like running back talk here. So Alvin Kamara, I think, had a career high today in rush attempts, 26 times, and he had 120 yards. The weirdest thing, just absolutely no targets. Like he's being used like a traditional between the tackles grinder. And I think this is why his ADP was fairly low to start of the season, right? People were really worried about this New Orleans offense. They had no idea what it was going to look like. There was like the base case for Kamara was like, yeah, he should be a first rounder, but how high should he be going? And then you get to, come 2 weeks before the season, everyone's just sort of like dance off for like Alvin Kamara. Like, what is your outlook on him going forward? Because it's clear that he's not going to return that like early cost.
Yeah, Jameis Winston set a season high in pass attempts today with 24. Like they just don't throw. He's had, this isn't in order because I don't remember, but he's had 20, 21, 22, and 24 pass attempts. Like they just don't throw. And then Tony Jones also got hurt today. I honestly forget who their RB3 is, but like Kamara is gonna get just a lot of targets. I think he's gonna smash. The last few years it's been Kamara and Latavius. Like it has been, they kind of split
targets?
the work. Like no carries.
Yeah, that's like the issue because Kamara's value is really in the receiving game. He had zero targets today. They gave targets. They gave 3 targets to Ty Montgomery. Remember him? They gave 3 targets to Tony Jones. Remember him? DOA. They gave 1 target to Dwayne Washington. There are 7 targets over here that went to running backs not named Alvin Kamara.
Taysom Hill had 2 targets.
Not Alvin Kamara. Like hypothetically, not even hypothetically. Like Alvin Kamara is the best receiver on this team, in my opinion. Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Juwan Johnson.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. It's especially troubling to see this in a game where the Saints didn't even win, right? They lost to the Giants. Gave the Giants their first win of the season. So, like, it's not like they were even playing well. And I mean, I don't know, maybe not targeting Kamara has something to do with that. But I mean, you would expect them to, in any kind of game, I mean, in a game like this especially, you would expect them to be a little more aggressive with the weapons they have. So, yeah, I don't think this is good news for Kamara, but
I think it's definitely bad news. Like it's literally like they've made him just the between the tackles grinder. I think he's gonna crush like his career high and market share of carries, but he's not getting the targets. You would think with this receiving core that they would like find like creative ways to get him the ball. They're not doing that. And then I was actually wrong. Winston had 23 pass attempts today, so they're also just very slow, very run heavy. Which definitely not good. Like what I was trying to say earlier is that like the previous years it's been Kamara and then Latavius like splitting carries, and then Kamara's been like the passing down guy. And this year it seems like they've just flipped that, where now it's like Kamara workhorse on early downs and getting him the ball as a receiver is like second priority now.
Yeah, because the Giants actually on the other side of the ball was Saquon, who's been trending back to normal almost. Like now, I think he's like good to go. He gets a pretty nice stretch or like an easier stretch of players. He had 13 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. But more interestingly, at least on my side, was the 6 targets that he turned into a 5-7, like got 5 of them for 74 yards and a touchdown, right? Like Jack, like where are you at with Saquon Barkley? Like, do you think he's going to return like, high-end RB1 numbers going forward? What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's like back to where he was prior to getting hurt in 2020. I mean, his market share number, like he is like an absolute workhorse right now on a market share level. Like Devontae Booker, I guess, had 1 catch today, but like Saquon is dominating carries. He's dominating targets. I mean, the only thing that could hold him back is like this offense and the offensive line, but the volume is going to be amazing. And then he's obviously a fantastic player. So I think Saquon is back to what he's been as like a high-end RB1.
Yeah, buddy.
Another guy in this game I want to touch on.
I know who you're going to talk about.
Is it going to be Tony?
Yeah, of course. I mean, 9 targets, and he wasn't terrible. I didn't see the game, so I don't know how many of them were like touch passes, but 78 yards on 6 catches. He's someone that Josh Norris convinced us to draft in one of our Pentagon leagues, and I'm sure we dropped him by now. But
we were the first waiver run. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah. But I mean, were we just dead wrong on him?
I think it's too early to say that. Maybe I'm just not taking the L or something. But I mean, what it took for Tony to get on the field was Sterling Shepard, who looked like the Giants' like real wide receiver 1, and Slayton both getting hurt. Tony definitely looked better than I thought he would today. But I don't think especially once Shepard is back, he's going to take over the slot again. And he was getting ridiculous target numbers early in the season. So this doesn't change my opinion of him long-term too much. But like maybe in the short term, as long as Shepard and Slayton are out, like, yeah, he's a fine option. But for the rest of the season, I think it'll be Shepard again once he's back.
I think it was helpful that Daniel Jones played really well. Kenny Golladay got in the mix there with catching 6 of his 7 targets for 116 yards. John Ross came off of IR and put up got 3 of his 4 targets for 77 yards and a TD, right? Like, so it was good to see. I don't know. This is probably like the best game of Jones's of the season so far for Jones. So kind of interesting, right? Like with Saquon getting a little bit healthier, like it's gonna like there's a lot of value to be mined here, I guess. So make sure, I guess, Tony is rostered in 12-team leagues if you're needy at wide receiver.
Yeah, certainly Jones's best passing game, although he actually scored more points in week 2. But that's another guy that probably is worth talking about because he's looked most of the season, apart from really last week, he's looked like, QB1 level fantasy quarterback. I mean, are we okay starting him?
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, he's running too. He only had 4 carries today, but like most games, he's been running a lot. So yeah, I like Daniel Jones.
Words you never thought you'd hear on RotoViz Radio.
For fantasy, at least.
Yeah. Anyone else we want to talk about? We touched on Cordero Patterson, but I want to get some more thoughts on him and how sustainable this kind of performance is. I mean, obviously you're not expecting 3 touchdowns every week, but should we be thinking of him as like an RB1, like top 12 running back in fantasy?
I don't think so. I'm trying to find a tweet. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this is Dwayne McFarland at PFF. So today, Cordero played 30% of snaps. He ran a route on 29% of dropbacks, and he had 22% of rushing attempts. Like, he just really had, like, really ridiculous efficiency. Like really ridiculous. Like, not just like normal. He had an efficient game. Like, this was almost unheard of from an efficiency perspective. So I think Cordero's like a flex, but I definitely I'm not gonna go crazy with him.
Frank Duffy says this conversation is the most run Tony's gotten all year, and that is actually true, folks. It was like looking pretty bad for him for quite some time. Jack, I just wanted to just push back just a little bit on that because I do think like Cordero Patterson reminds me quite a lot of that big breakout season there for Raheem Mostert, right? Like where he was getting very limited touches, very limited work, and then he just sort of has the speed to take it all to the house. Full disclosure, Cordero is our RB2 in a bunch of leagues. We just lost Damian Harris. Don't know when he's going to be back. He looked pretty hurt on that play. So we're going to be probably scrounging around at running back. So I do agree with you that he's a flex option for people who don't ignore the RB2 slot because that's what we did.
I think that's fair. Like, I think if you do like the whole a risk of getting canceled, modified 0 RB. I think he's like a fine RB2, especially. I think he's a fine RB2 if you're like really hurting a running back. But in most instances, I think you have to look at his performance today with like a great deal of context and skepticism.
Yeah. We haven't really done this before, but we can talk kind of breaking news now. Like if Damian Harris has to miss time, since we did bring up spending a whole lot of money on Ramondre, is he where you would be going for if you're looking for a Patriots running back?
Yeah,
did Damian Harris get hurt?
Yeah, it looked pretty bad too. Yeah, him and Jacoby Myers, they had like a tangle. Myers is playing through it. He's really gutting through it. So like I'm really genuinely impressed. But Damian Harris looked to be in a lot of pain. He is yet to come back.
Okay, so this is what Nathan, I might not pronounce it, Nathan John, like the PFF guy. He just tweeted out like 20 seconds ago that Damian Harris was in for the kneel down.
Okay, so he's back in. All right, interesting. Good.
So he should be good. Yeah.
All right. So when will we see Ramondre then? Never.
I mean, with Belichick, like it might be never.
It's a good use of your fab to go all in on Ramondre and then not get to play him.
Hey. You can't take the fab with you. It's not going anywhere.
That's a good point. Right. With that, we will call it a night. Thank you to our guest, Jack Miller. Jack, what do you have going on this season?
Yeah, I'm doing some work for NBC Sports Edge, a couple articles a week there, and then I'm doing some prop betting type stuff for Establish the Run. And then my Twitter is JackMiller02. I think that's all the like self-plugging stuff I've got.
He's really underselling it. You guys got to go follow him because he's got a lot of really good usage tidbits up there. Do yourself a favor and get smarter.
Definitely, yes. Definitely follow Jack. Go check out his work. You will definitely be a better fantasy player for it. All right, that'll do it. Special thanks to Jack Miller. I said that already. Thank you for tuning in. Catch us next week, same time.
Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.